Welcome to the Kosher Terroir. I'm Simon Jacob, your host for this episode. The following is a conversation with Ya'acov Oryah, one of the most creative winemakers in Israel. He recently moved down to a new winery in Yeruchum called Pinto, and our discussion is about the complexities and the difficulties of making wine in the desert. It's a little bit more technical than our typical podcasts, but I think it's still incredibly interesting and should be a lot of fun. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a glass of great kosher wine. I'm here with my good friend Ya'acov Oryah, actually sitting in his kitchen while he's preparing dinner. So if you hear noises in the background, they're kosher noises. They're good noises. So it's a pleasure to be down in Yeruchum. It's a pleasure to be here with you in Yeruchum.
It's a pleasure to have you.
And I very much enjoyed walking through the new winery this morning and also walking out in the vineyard and checking all the different varietals that are planted and growing and actually expressing themselves in the vineyard. The first question I have for you is, it's beautiful, but why are you in the desert? What are you doing here?
Well,
it seems purposeful.
As usual, I really don't know.
Okay.
I could try to elaborate on what I do or what I try to do. I don't really have a lot of insight of why life brought me to where I am. You know, that's cool. beyond my vision or sight. It started in 2008. I was very much interested in planting a vineyard and opening a winery in the area of Yatir. And to do that, I wanted to get land. And to get land, I wanted to join a settlement called Har Amasa. And the place it's a kibbutz that fell apart, and there was a lot of tension going on there. People weren't talking to each other. So eventually I met up with Eliezer Bar Sadeh, which today runs Yekiv Tzuf. And he was one of the people who used to live in Har Amasa. And I met him to help me get in, which didn't happen, but he told me, look, you want to be here in the area, so why don't you come down to the industrial zone of Arad, which is around 15 minutes by car, and start here, and eventually, try to get your land and your vineyards working, but it will take you time. In the meantime, you get started in Arad. And that's what I did. We moved from the center to Arad, and we came in August. I just had all my grapes planned for the harvest, and I made a harvest, and then I was curious. The harvest was over, and I was starting to plan for 2009, and I was intrigued by the idea of terroir. My perception of it at the time was just the beginning, but it had a different value of making something local.
So I just want to be clear, because many people don't know where Arad is, but Arad is definitely in the Negev.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's below the mountain. The high mountain of Israel starts in the Carmel, goes to Shechem, to Har Bracha, to Jerusalem, Hebron, Gush Etzion on the way, and it ends in Yatir. That's the end of the mountain ridge. And below that is Bikat Arad Valley, and that's the beginning of real Negev terroir. So I wanted to make local wine, and it was my starting points. I just wanted to understand what grows here locally. It's not a matter of better or worse. It was just an idea that I should make wine that represents this place. This quest that started in 2009 to make wines of terroir taught me a lot, and gave me a lot of insight for what I'm doing now, today, in these days. But at the time, I wanted to make Negev wine, and I started to shop. There was very few growers here at the time. there was one neglected vineyard of Barkan, and that they grew their Chardonnay. It was impossible to get their fruit because the vineyard was neglected. And everything else was small growers that they had, a little guest house in the middle of the Negev. And part of their hosting experience was that you could have a wine that was made, within the site, within this Batei Arachach. They used to call it Chavot Bodedim.
Chateau, within the estate estate?
Well, not yet, but it was called Chavot Bodedim, and a lot of them had vineyards. A lot of them had vineyards, and most of the vineyards went to big wineries that just added to their bulk.
Yep.
And they tried to make little small wines for themselves. And the first thing I did is taste wines. I went around, tried to see what's available, what comes out of these fruits. And it was clearly not impressive. But I wasn't sure if it's not impressive because of the growing area, or it's not impressive because the people that made it had in mind to make something for their guest house, representing part of their wholesome experience, and not really done by professional winemakers that understand processes and dangers and what to do and how to deal with things. So I thought I'm going to experiment myself, and I shopped around. I got quite a lot of fruit from these Chavot Bodedim. I got Merlot, I got Cabernet, I got Zinfandel, I got Barbera, I got Nebbiolo. I got a whole range of what was available then. And I made them in my winery in Asif. And at the same time, this was 2009, the first fruit of Nana, which today is Nana Winery, Eran Raz planted a vineyard 3 years earlier. And in 2009 was the first fruit. So he offered me his fruit. From all the fruit that I got in those Chavot Bodedim, I understood that the terroir of the Negev, the expression of what the Negev does to the grape, is so powerful that the common denominator of Negev was overpowering the differentiating factor of the varietal.
Of varietals, yeah.
It doesn't make a difference. I had their Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and they all tasted Negev.
What makes it so overpowering?
Oh, it's extreme growing conditions. If you talk about the range where we grow grapes, it's usually from, it's called longitude?
Longitude and latitude.
Latitude. It's
Latitude.
It's the vertical. It's the horizontal lines.
Right.
So it usually goes from 30 to 50.
Okay.
Today with global warming, it's going a little bit beyond 50, but that's basically the range in which wines are produced. Grapes could grow below and above, but their ability to make a quality wine is
within those
is compromised. So the wines will come from there. So Israel, to begin with, is something like 31, between 31 and 32. So we're really at the southern end of what you could consider legitimate for a wine growing area. You go to the Negev, you have, first of all, you're closer significantly to the equator. Your radiation is more direct. Then you have
sun's radiation.
Sun's radiation, yeah. Ultraviolet.
Yeah.
And then you have returning radiation, because there's no vegetation on the floor. The soil is not black or brown or anything that would absorb the sun rays. So it's reflected from the floor, which is almost white, to the grapes from the bottom. So you have double radiation. It's more radiation because of the equator. You have double radiation because it's also returning from the soil itself. And then you have extreme day and night temperature differences. So, and each of those aspects will provide something that will express itself in the Negev, to a point where I was starting to say, I'll elaborate what I think they do, each of those aspects, but what I found that they're so noticeable that they overpower the differentiation between varietals. My first wine, actually, I called it Negev Red. I just put everything in one vat. I said, "You're all Negev. Don't bother me."
Wow.
And I have Negev Red 2009, and just put everything there. I said, I listened to the grapes. So I don't have an agenda that it has to be Cabernet, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make it Cabernet. My plan is always a starting point, but I try to pay attention to...
Follow the expression of the grapes.
Yeah. It's more than expressions, but their abilities. It's before expression even. And paying attention to the grapes, I realized that I can't call it a Cabernet and that call it Merlot, and the difference between them is for, some high expert to say, "Oh, this is Cabernet." Nobody would recognize a Cabernet anyway because they're tasting Negev. So I just made a Negev Red. At the same time, at the same year, Eran Raza started to say his vineyard started to yield, and I was able to buy from him white grapes. He was the only person that was growing white grapes. I bought from him Chenin Blanc and Chardonnay. Thank God, my personal style preferences are low alcohol, and the wines that I made were, not so common to the time. I'm talking about 2009. At the time, Chardonnay was usually buttery, oak, 14.5%. Chenin Blanc also, to a great extent, is made like that today. And I am not sure that had I done those styles, the beauty of what the desert does to white grapes would have shown through, because it would have been worn out by time and by losing acidity. But as I said, thank God my preferences were for crisper wines, and I harvested early. And I actually paid for Iran for the grapes with part of the wine. I mean, the first two vintages of Nana Winery were actually wines that we bartered. Thank you. On grapes for wine. So okay. I took the Chardonnay and the Chenin, and he got part of the wine. And because it was harvested early, the second lesson I had that year, one of them is the great influence that you lose everything in a red wine. The second lesson was that in a white wine, you are almost in Europe.
Wow.
And I'll explain my understanding. Why is that in white and why is that in red? Okay. First of all, the three factors that I mentioned before, the direct radiation, the returning radiation, and the day-night temperature, cause very quick ripening. The radiation helps it. The return radiation helps it more. And the day and night temperatures stop the metabolism of the grape fast in the evening, which means, to explain what I just said, a grape its ripening is not linear. It's not like a line, a graph that goes up. It's more like a saw. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like a jagged saw. But it goes more up than down, so eventually you have a graph that's escalating. Yep. But it's what happens is the sugars go into the grape during the day, and at night they go back to the leaves, and then again they go back to the grape and back to the leaves. So the sugar levels in the grape are constantly going up during the day and down during the night. If you present it with an environment which it gets cold fast, then the sugar levels from the day don't really have time to go back to the leaves because everything gets cold and everything stops.
I don't know. Don't worry.
So that by itself means that you'll reach the sugar levels of harvest faster because it didn't have time to go down enough. It's just going up and up and up and up without the up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down.
Got it. So
you reach harvest at an early stage. And what happens is that the deterioration of acids, which happens in all grapes, but it happens in the evening when the vine stops doing photosynthesis and starts breathing. It starts intaking oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide, which is the opposite of photosynthesis. Mm-hmm. During that process of breathing, it consumes its acids. So the more chance it has to breathe, the less acids you will have. When you have an escalated ripening cycle because of the radiation and the day-night temperatures, so your acids don't really have a chance to deteriorate. Again, if I would harvest at 14.5% alcohol, what I'm saying would be lost. But because I harvested relatively early, I found that there's a lovely acid in the grape. And actually the acid is more complex, because if you correct acid, you lose a complex of acids, but you correct only with the main acid. Our main acid that we lose is tartaric acid, and when we compensate with tartaric acid. All the small, tiny amounts of other acids that are there and also lost,
don't get replaced.
They don't get replaced, and eventually you're losing something complex, and you're compensating with something one-dimensional. So you're losing complexity.
Yeah.
And that's what I found in 2009 in the whites, that I'm actually getting a hint of cold climates where I'm getting the full acid range. It's not only that I have a lot of acid, but it's interesting acid. It's not one-dimensional. So those are two lessons of 2009. And I explained what happens in the white. I'll elaborate also what happens in the red. What happens in the red is that you don't get enough phenolics in the skin because of the fast ripening. Now, in the white wine, you throw away the skin. So it doesn't make a difference. You don't get a lot of phenolics. Your wine is really based on acid, and you have plenty of it. But when you have a red wine that ferments with the skins, the fact that the skin is poor, didn't get enough substance because it didn't have enough time on the vine, plays a role. Now, so you get wines that are basically light. Had it not been Negev, a light wine like that would be very green, because you're harvesting so early, you're harvesting something almost unripe, so you have a lot of green flavors. But the radiation, the ultraviolet, breaks down the pyrazine. So you're harvesting early, but you don't have, there's a note of green, but it's not what you would expect to have, it's not what you would expect, the amount of greenness of the wine, because the direct radiation and the returning radiation break it down. So what you end up with a light wine, it's very enjoyable, spicy, a lot of fun, usually lacking the depth and complexity to age. Or and when I say age, I don't mean survive, I mean to develop.
Yeah, got it.
How do I help? Everything is done. I'm just gonna.
You can get something to drink.
Would you like to taste some Negev wines as we talk along and chat about them?
I definitely want to do that.
So that Ephraim knows how to help.
Okay, that I definitely want to do.
I actually brought 3 red wines.
Great.
Because
which one are they?
Grenache, Syrah,
yes,
and Cholot.
Okay. As I said, we're in Yaakov's kitchen, preparing dinner.
Grenache.
We're going to start with Grenache. We're going to taste some wine while we're doing this.
Some Negev wines.
Yeah, some Negev wines, which are ultimately the whole reason we're here.
We can continue.
So yeah, this is the Pinto Grenache.
This is the Pinto Grenache from the...
What year?
2022. Actually just released.
Okay.
It was not an oak. And it has... and it's from the Yeruchum vineyard that we visited today. Those photogenic grapes.
So the question I have for you is... So this is the Grenache 2022.
So I started to say, we did not really have a plan to produce a Grenache on our on our portfolio, but there was just so much charm in this wine. If you like Grenache, it's not for everybody, but if you like Grenache, I think it's a true Grenache. It's light, it's spicy, it's fruity, it's red fruit. Not heavy, not dark. You could chill it a bit, you know.
What am I going to taste?
Oh,
tell me.
No, taste and then you'll tell me. Just give it a few minutes.
Okay.
We'll air out.
Yeah.
So the wine is clearly light.
Yeah, but that's Grenache.
You could have Grenache that is more heavier.
Right.
If you go to Vitkin, you go to Harei Galil, you go to there's a few other producers here. Those are the kosher ones that I could think of offhand. Ramat Golan.
Yeah.
You would find wines that are more dense, more with substance, I would say, more concentrated.
Yeah, but this is balanced. It's and it has a long finish on it. It's actually quite lovely. It is light, but it's nice.
I think this is a very typical Negev wine, where you get the spice. Mm-hmm. You don't hardly have any tannin.
Yeah, it's almost no tannin.
Very juicy.
That's true.
The acidity, as we said, we harvest early. This is 13%. And you harvest early, you get good acidity there.
It has good acidity.
And you know, I think what I tried to do here is not tame the Grenache to be a Syrah. I mean,
Yep.
that means it was really letting it be, because you know, everything that I said before about the red grapes is true about have Cabernet and Syrah. And they all have that ability to be spicy and abundant and light. Grenache starts off light. So if you do that on a Grenache, you'll end up with something that's almost juice, almost a fruit juice.
Yeah.
And it was just a decision, to let it be, not fight it, not trying to make it more concentrated or darker or heavier, because I think there's place for wines like this in a hot climate, Israel, and they're not available enough. They're usually there to impress, and it's very hard to impress with the Grenache. So they work very hard to fight its true nature. And here it's taking its true nature to an extreme which you don't find other places, and it's just a fun wine. It's not meant to be anything but just drink and enjoy.
Wow. This is really lovely. It cleared up for what I was tasting before, and it's also it's lighter, it's crisper. The acidity is there so that it gives you it's really perfect. It's perfect for the summer.
It's meant to be a
perfect.
Summer wine.
It's perfect.
And I wouldn't chill it because it just closes the wine. You can't take it out of the refrigerator like a white.
Yeah.
But take it out of the wine refrigerator and drink it right away. 57 Fahrenheit, 14 Celsius.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's beautiful. It's actually now I'm getting kind of a floral acid.
Very floral.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Right.
Great. Very cool.
Now, by definition, this wine did not go into barrels. In fact, it did. Because usually Grenache tends to be oxidative. And Syrah turns to be reductive, and you blend them and you get a balance. Each of them balance each other out. For some reason, this Grenache was a bit reductive. And I put it in the barrels just for the micro-oxidization, just to let it breathe a bit. I was there for 3 months. I don't count them as barrel months. They were just breathing months. And it cleared it up. What you taste in the beginning when you open it is a little bit, memories of the reductiveness. But a few minutes in the glass and it blows away.
And it goes away. No, it does. It's great. I love it. It's really good. And it's great wow. It's great that this is coming out of the Grenache grapes that we were walking down
Yeah, we just walked
the
there.
vineyard row and tasting this coming year's production, which is not too long from now.
Oh, very close.
Yes, might be.
And I think I see it in the color. I think 2023 will be a little bit more dense than what we have here, because last year the foliage, the leaves were short. They didn't grow to a full height. This year we're able to get a better, wall of leaves. And I see it in the color. Last year in the variation, there was a lot of pink. And here it goes from green to purple. So actually we're getting more substance. So I'm going to continue making this wine, but it's going to be a little bit more hefty.
This journey of yours since Asif has continued.
Yes.
And I was surprised at the number of varietals that you were blending back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
It was more than what I would expect other people to blend. And it was a lot of experimentation. I mean, it was cool. One of the things I love about you as a winemaker is that you're always experimenting, always keeping very precise notes on what you're doing. You're not willy-nilly experimenting. As you experiment, you learn from every little detail that you implement. And I was surprised because I didn't think even back in 2008, 2009, that you were using all the different varietals that I know you're known for using now. And it's cool to see that development and process over the years.
I started with winemaking with a problem and a benefit. The problem was that my palate, I'll say it in a different way. The problem was and benefit is that I didn't grow up in a house of people that drink wine. I had wine for Kiddush, and I never thought of it as a beverage. Only after the army, I went to relatives that drank good wines from Italy and California, and I realized that wine could also taste good. It was not something you thought about as something that's supposed to taste good. And I started to, develop an interest, and I found an importer of Burgundy wines. And not just regular Burgundy wines, but the top of the top, the Romani Conti and Lafon and all the big names.
Yep.
I knew nothing of of the wine world in general. I'm not talking about Burgundy. I knew nothing of wine, and I wanted to learn. So I found this guy, and I started.
What a great place to start.
And I started to go to his tastings. It was still affordable at that time. Yeah. And my palate as a wine consumer developed on high-end Burgundies. This is way before I was thinking of making wine. And that's, my perception of wine aesthetics was those real fine, complex, delicate, silky wines. And then I, over the time, started to make wine. And
those are mainly Pinots?
Pinot and Chardonnay. That's
Pinots and Chardonnays,
that's
right?
It. And
what a wonderful place to start.
and it's a wonderful place, but it put me in a problem as a winemaker because I wanted to make my Grand Cru Pinot Noir from Burgundy, and no, we're in Israel.
Yeah,
we don't have the varietals, and we don't have the terroir.
Well, at that time, people were trying to make,
Rich
big, bold Cabernets,
right.
And you were at least at a point where you were like trying to accomplish something that was like close to achievable. But
it wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
It really wasn't. I brought for dinner my first attempt on Pinot Noir. Well, let's taste it now.
Okay.
You need another glass for that. But I want the Burgundy glasses, okay? And I've been making Pinot Noir from 2011. I only bottled twice. And not all my
I only
production.
tasted your first one.
Oh, 2020, I You'll have to get.
Okay.
And bottle 19 and 20. And also, not all of my Pinot Noir, but 1 barrel. Or 2020 was 2 barrels. That's it.
Because you blended them with other things. You used them.
I used them for the Duc Pontife.
Yeah.
That's where its main, place is. But my attempt to make Pinot Noir is consistent, and that's really my problem, because I was trying to make wines of elegance in a climate that did not promote it. And my whole quest, or search, or experiments, as you call it, is trying to solve that dissonance. How do I make in a hot climate an elegant wine? Now, if I would want to make a big wine, I know how to do it. I worked in places that's what they wanted from me, and I make big wines. That's fun. I also like them, but it's not really what I'm aiming for. The second advantage.
I have a question.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you call the SOB 2018?
It's a big wine.
That's a big wine.
Oh, that's a big wine.
Such a delicious wine. Wow.
The Pinot Noir 2011 from Asif.
Yeah.
When I'm saying no to my son Ephraim, who's working tonight as our
us.
sommelier.
Yes, who's working. Poor guy. Yes. No, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
The second advantage I have...
As an interviewer, you should never interrupt, but I'm sorry. I'm new to the game.
As a second advantage that I have is the same thing that I said before, that I didn't grow up in a house that drank wine. So I didn't know what wine's supposed to be. It means when I go and make a wine and I say, let's try it that way, or just try it the other way, I'm free to do it, because to me they're both good. So I have a lot of freedom in my quest, because I'm not restrained by the right wine, or the way wine is supposed to be. So I'm, on one hand, I have this dissonance of a quest for elegance in a hot climate. On the second hand, I have a lot of freedom to explore, and because there's no right and wrong, at least in my feeling. And I could say that all along I've been trying to solve that problem. I think I figured it out, 15 years later with my playground. I'll get to that. But what you see in those early blendings, when you just read the reviews of 2010 and 9, is that...
It was a review by Daniel Rogoff from 2011, but it was of the 2000...
Wines of 2008 and 9 and 10.
Yeah.
I was trying to get... A Burgundy cup. Behind the old, there.
The big round ones.
On the left. On the left. Those guys. This has to, we have to give it a few minutes to air out.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a great Pinot Noir. Had I thought it was, I would bottle it. But it's just fun to remember. I have 12 bottles. Now I have 10 bottles. I had 11.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm happy to share.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for me.
That's...
What? Okay. It's called priming.
This is really so nicely drinkable, this Grenache.
So to answer your question, I was trying... If you talk about the wines that I had in my quest, those are wines of complexity and low key. It means it's easy to make a big wine that has a lot going on, but it's huge, big, and massive. It's easy to make a gentle wine that has very little going on. The challenge is to make a wine that has a lot going on, but not massive. That's the elegance that you find in cold climate wines. Put aside my passion for Pinot Noir. If you're talking about cold climate, what I just said is really what you get there. You get complexity, density, without being heavy, without being alcoholic, without being flabby or oaky or whatever it is. It's just there. It's what cold climate knows how to give. So I'm trying to get to that complexity, and the first thing you do is blend. The first step in my quest was to blend. In my course in 2004 in Ya'acov Oryah, when I learned how to make wine, and I had a demijohn of 25 liters, I had to make 2 demijohns because I had to try to blend with Merlot. I was the first person in that course that actually made 2 wines to blend them.
Wow.
And there's many steps that are needed to deal with your climate, which in other words is to deal with your terroir. And that was really my first, the blending. I see it back then, because that's the simplest, obvious, way to go to.
Very cool. We're going to try this Pinot. Well, actually, we're going to let it sit in the glass a little bit and get some air, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It looks beautiful. It's really nice and dark. This is a 2011 that comes from the Asif winery under your...
Yes, from Dalton. Actually, I actually still have... this wine I made for the grower. The grower had a winery. His name is Mordechai Mamo. He knew about my passion for Pinot. He did not know nothing about Pinot. He said, "You make Pinot." So I made it in my service winery. He made all his wines for himself by himself. And the Pinot he gave me to make for memories.
Yeah. Baruch Hashem.
Give it some time.
So different.
Yeah.
It's a lot different. It's lovely. But yes, okay.
So after he didn't like the wine. He's a Cabernet person, and Pinot was not a wine for him. Yeah. And that's my plot of Pinot. I still have it.
Wow.
That's where I make my Pinot from.
And he still drinks cabs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like mint.
It has mint in it. Yeah. It's very tannic. Surprisingly, after 12 years.
Yeah, it doesn't taste like
It's not a Burgundy. No, it's not a Pinot of Burgundy at all. But after it airs out a bit, it will have some of the profile. I think it's
It's herbaceous. It does like mint.
herbaceous, right?
It has some hazelnuts.
Hazelnuts, yes, it does. That's our sommelier talking. Okay, let's.
You're very true. It is herbaceous. It does have even some hazelnuts in it. You're right. Very cool. Very cool.
It'll be better like in an hour.
Yeah, we'll let it be opened. Okay. So let's get back to the desert.
So let's go to another wine of the desert. This is just for memory's sake.
Yes.
If I want to open us our Shiraz 22. More wines I want to taste with you to understand the Negev. We start with the Grenache, and it's lightness, and you're taking a light vine and a light grape, and taking it to an extreme till you get something very different from the Israeli wine scene. But here, if you taste this wine, let's taste it together.
Again, this is the Shiraz.
Shiraz from the vineyard of Yeruchum, 2022.
222. Wow.
Unoaked.
This also has a mint to it.
A what?
But a mint, a little bit of mintiness. to it, and it's got certainly more body. It's also very well balanced across the whole palate, from front to back. There's no holes. It's really nice.
See, I think this is another aspect of Negev Reds. And think of something that trickles, okay? As if your grapes are trickling into them flavor. And it comes slowly. It trickles, it trickles, it trickles, it trickles. So if you have a cold climate where the maturation is slow, you will get a lot of trickling, and eventually you will accumulate a lot of flavors. But each aspect of the flavors is a trickle. So you have a very complex wine in a cold climate, but it has, because it has many aspects, but each aspect is part of a greater whole. When you go to the Negev, we're talking about the fast maturation. So, the spectrum of the trickles is cut much shorter than in colder regions. So you have a very short time on the vine for the vine to get its flavors. On the other hand, because of the radiation, it doesn't trickle, it pours. So you have your wine that's plays with your brain, if you think of it. It's a very rich wine, and it's light.
But it has the spiciness of a Shiraz.
It has the spiciness of the Shiraz. It also has the spiciness of the desert.
Right.
It's not very tannic.
Yeah, no, it's got some though. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's got no tannin.
It has more.
It's got tannins. It's got more
because it's after all Shiraz and not Grenache, but it's not very complex. You don't have a lot of flavors going on here. You have a nice set of flavors, and you have abundance of them. So it's not, let's go to extreme example. If you go to Côte Rôtie, where the part of the best Shirazes are made, they're almost Burgundy in style. They're lean, they're very elegant. There are a lot of things going on there, but they don't have richness. They have complexity, which over time is developed into a fabulous wine. But here it's just abundant. So on one hand, you have the abundant because of the radiation. On the other hand, you have a vine that has to be harvested fast because you don't want to have a wine full of complexity but with 18% alcohol because you can't drink it. So you harvest early, and you have a wine that's juicy, rich, very flavorful, not very complex, and spicy. And I hardly pick up any green notes here. It's not that it's not there. And it's
okay.
It's a vine that's harvested very early, but it's lost its greenness, a lot of times typical to Israeli Shiraz, because of the radiation and the returning radiation that we talked about.
Interesting.
So you have your wine that's harvested very early, and it's not green. And it's abundant, but it's not complex. And that's Negev.
Wow. So you can make wines. You can make wines in the Negev.
Oh. The reason I went to Pinto Winery is because it's people that, first of all, I fell in love with them. Very nice people.
They're such sweethearts.
But
Jimmy,
that,
David, the only ones I've met are Jimmy and David. And Jimmy is like senior awesomeness. And David is just like totally committed to...
Oh, yes, he is.
To really making sure that everything works. Super.
Now, besides the fact that I think they're wonderful people, their approach was what I was missing. See, I was in the Negev, and I had a Asif winery, and it did not continue. It was successful in wine aspects, but it was not so successful commercially, and we closed. And my quest to understand red wines of the Negev and make them a big wine, not just that... are good despite the Negev, but are able to express what the Negev is and have uniqueness in the wine world because it's grown in the Negev. And I think the last two wines represent that, because the Grenache is very Grenache, but it's not a typical Grenache anyplace else.
Right.
And the Syrah, you have a lot more examples of Syrah, so it's, but I still think the aspects of it where it's rich and not tannic and not complex, but very, very rich and flavorful, is something that represents negative. So their approach was that they want to make wines that are not good despite the negative, or legitimate despite the negative, or acceptable despite the negative, but they want wines that are representing the terroir of the negative with its uniqueness. And because of that approach, I was really happy to return to the negative, because for many years I was not here, and when I left Psâgot, I was thinking to expand my private brand and just make that my livelihood. And then I met them, and really something internally that wanted to figure out how to make red wines in the Negev, and was never satisfied. I said, here I have an opportunity. I will continue my quest, and
I call it experimentation.
It's really experimentation.
But it is a quest. It is a quest.
And I think my last year in the Negev, I touched it. I started to understand what really to do, and I'm in Pinto winery. I have a lot of varietals. I have freedom. I have technology, and I'm able to explore. I'm really happy to continue this. I told the Pinto family that it will take them 10 years to reach where they're reaching, and that's just to give me 10 years to continue exploring.
That's so cool.
The next wine we're going to have, and that's really the final conclusion of what I was just saying now, is the Cholot, where you're able to achieve the complexity that the single varietal doesn't have because of the fast ripening, and you take the tools that I used back then in 2011, and you get complexity and balance
by doing
not
blends,
because
by
of
blending.
You have a great grape that performs wonderfully in the Negev, but because you're able to balance it out and get complexity by using different kinds of grapes. Ephraim,
so
sommelier requirement is you to open the Cholot. You didn't. Okay.
So, tell me about the Cholot.
Cholot. Where is my Cholot, Ephraim? Here it is. Right in front of my eyes. The Cholot. Cholot is the mid-range level of Pinto's portfolio. On one hand, it's very nice to start with a great wine and then trickle down a portfolio of people that want a great brand, but you have it at a little more accessible price. Yatir did that. They started off with Yatir. Castel did that with Grand Vin. And reality doesn't always allow you to do that, because you're starting in the Negev, you're pioneering, you don't really know what you're going to have. So you start with entry level, and then you figure it out, and you go to mid level, and then you figure it out more, and you go to a higher level. So we hope to start our higher level in 2023, because I sampled already the vineyard. I made wines from it. I think I have there enough what I need to make high-end wines. And this is the mid-level. So what you're really getting here, it's actually a Bordelais blend. Eventually we will have two red wines in Cholot. One of them is a Bordeaux blend, and the second one will be a Rhone varietal blend.
So tell me about the Bordeaux blend. What makes it a Bordeaux blend?
Okay, in Bordeaux there's 5 acceptable varietals, legitimate, that you're allowed to use and call your wine Bordeaux. The main ones are Cabernet Sauvignon. The main one is Cabernet Sauvignon. The secondary is Merlot and Cabernet Franc. And esoteric, you will find Malbec and Petit Verdot. When you go to the Negev, which is a very, very, very different, we don't have Atlantic influences here, sadly. And so what you end up with grapes that perform very differently than Bordeaux. And one of the best Bordeaux varietals that in the Negev that performs the best is Malbec. So it's a blend that's something like 55% Malbec. Secondary there you'll find the Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot, which perform very nicely in the Negev. Then Merlot, and I could have eliminated it, but I wanted to have a fully Bordeaux blend, so I have 2% of Cabernet Sauvignon.
Very cool. Wow. That's got tannins. That's got, but again, it's got this balance that flows through your whole palate. It's, the finish isn't quite as long, but this is just opened. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful.
See what you have here, and you don't have in the Syrah or Grenache. It's layered. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot. There's different layers of the wine. It's like it's not just rich; it's complex. The complexity that you didn't have before, you have it here.
Yeah. And it develops in your mouth. It develops on your palate over a few moments as you.
And if you notice, you still have the characteristics of the Negev. You still have there that herbaceousness and the spice, and
it's hanging in the background.
And it's not jammy. That's
right.
What's surprising.
Yeah. It's definitely not jammy.
Because you would think that the hotter you go, the more jammy you are. But the fact is that jamminess comes from overripeness, and these grapes were harvested on time.
Are they harvested on time or early?
Early.
Okay.
On time in my standards, early for the rest of the world.
Right. Yes. No, because it's, yeah.
Even having a note of salinity.
Yes. You can taste this. You can taste the salinity.
The salinity you taste here, I don't think you pick it up in the Grenache slightly. In the Syrah, it's overpowering fruit, so you don't taste it.
So you don't taste it because of that, right?
But this wine, which is the fruits more restrained, you pick it up in the Chardonnay and the Chenin Blanc. You pick it up because think of it, we're actually in the ocean floor of the Tethys Ocean. This used to be underwater of a salty ocean. The land here is saturated with salt. We have to actually irrigate, not for the vines, but to compel and to push away the salt from where the roots are going to be. When it rains here, we water, because the rain could push the salt back to the roots. So we have to put counter pressure. When it starts raining, we start watering.
So the water actually pushes the salt away
from the roots,
from where the root systems are. So that's why you put the water in. But if you have rain where it's saturating the soil all around, then the salt comes back in. Wow. Cool.
See, that's negative.
There's so many different attributes that I never, ever thought of that you had to deal with. It's just crazy.
That's part of why I took the job, because it's a challenge.
Wow. No, I love it.
It's not boring.
I love it. I love it. It's okay.
We will consider forgiving you.
Yes. We're in an active kitchen
This is actually good.
That's definitely attempting to make dinner and come up with some interesting things. And Patricia, Yaakov's wife, is squeezing oranges at the moment to get orange juice. I don't know how, but it's great. And today I tasted some of the fruit that she brought in from all the local farmers here, and the grapes and the cherries are to die for, and the figs are huge.
Figs are huge.
The figs are huge. Everything was just, it's like, as we read in the Torah a few weeks ago, when the spies came in, all of the produce was gigantic and it scared them. Here, I'm just in love. I'm in love. I'm in love with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is excellent wine. This
is really just starting to touch
what you can do,
what the Negev could produce, because it's just like the white wines are not compensated by only tartaric, but to have the initial complexity. Here too, you have wines that are you're achieving here things by blending, not by overripeness.
Yeah, but it's all coming from here. It's all coming from here, coming from the desert. It's unbelievable.
And I think we have, we talk about the Old Musketeer.
Yeah.
I stopped doing it because it's a one-time thing for me. It's an experiment on oxidization. and I don't have the patience to make 14 years of barrel aging, but I'm actually doing it for Pinto. We have a sweet wine program, which is the same approach as the Old Musketeer.
Okay.
And we have a sparkling wine program, which is fascinating because it's Negev white fruit.
Wow. Which could be totally awesome.
We're actually going more to the Loire. We're basing it on Chenin Blanc. In the Chenin Blanc, there's a lovely sparkling program, portfolio and producers. We're not going with the Chardonnay, which
is the champagne.
Usually you'll find the sparkling wines because it's the champagne, because the Chardonnay here is crisp and light and fun and summery, and the Chenin is more regal, more substance, more interesting and rich. And I think, especially if you harvest early, for a base wine at the potential alcohol of 11%, you need something with more tochen, with more substance.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a really crazy question. I should have a moment of silence here so that I can cut it out of the actual recording. What about an orange sparkling wine?
An orange sparkling wine is actually an oxymoron.
Right.
Because what you do not... I had a plan once to do that. It didn't materialize.
Because?
The real reason, not the official reason, but the real reason is because the base wine got floor.
Okay.
So I was a Simeon. I actually used that floor as a component in the gemma that I make for Brut in Tel Aviv. They wanted some note of floor, so every time
certain people love floor. They just love it. That's right.
So I have the Anthology of Hope and the Alpha Omega 2015 with floor, and Brut, their wine, this gemma. I use the base wine of 2014 as a component. But the fact is that when you in Champagne, I'm not talking about hot climates. In Champagne, in the cold places, when you press the grapes, you use whole clusters because you don't want any phenolics. You want something very lean and clean. And orange wine is exactly the opposite.
Yeah. As soon as you said that,
the problem is it's not. There's no right and wrong. The problem is that the bubbles will make the tannins aggressive.
Interesting.
That's really where the problem is. It's acid enhances tannin, and tannin enhances acid, and bubbles enhance acid. So you're something which, again, I'll probably just to prove to myself that what I just said now is true. I'll experiment.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is based on some kind of experience, and it's probably not pleasant.
Okay.
I'm going to try it. I never tried it, but I never was really in the need to try it because I understood what's going to happen.
Okay. I trust your experience and scientific judgment. Okay.
This is really enjoyable. I keep on drinking.
This is lovely. This is really lovely. This is. Yeah.
Now let's sit and eat.
Okay. So we're ready to sit and eat. And I thank you, Ya'acov, especially for inviting me into your house and allowing me to capture a few moments about desert wines.
Sure.
And really seeing the vineyards and seeing the winery. I pray for your hatzlacha rabbah.
Amen.
And I expect it. Because it's just, the preparations are just all there. And if you ever get a chance to come down to Yeruchum, I wouldn't say in the next few weeks.
Or months.
Yes. I would say,
October, November.
If you're planning to be in Israel next year, come down and they're really planning an incredible visitor center, and there's even a hotel nearby that you can stay at, and it's just really glorious, and it's in the middle of the desert. So, God bless.
Amen.
Shalom u'bracha.
Thank you.